Hello everyone and welcome to another episode of Culinary Cameron. What I'm doing today is I'm going to show you how to make pizza dough from scratch. Don't buy garbage ones from supermarkets, they're overpriced and they taste bad. So the only ingredients you need to make pizza dough is some sugar, just a teaspoonful, some yeast, hot water, flour, semolina, oil and salt. Now it's important with the first step we're going to do is we're going to activate the yeast. Now you need hot water to activate the yeast. If you use boiling water, you're going to kill it. If you use cold water, it's not going to activate. So we get some warm water as hot as this tap can run, and then we put the yeast in. And then we add some sugar. So what the sugar does is the sugar feeds it. Yeast is actually a living organism. So we want it to stay alive and we got to feed it. I've asked the producer to get me a spoon so that I don't have to go over there. Now what you want to do is you put your yeast and sugar in the hot water and then you mix it and you leave it to activate. So in about 5 minutes you should see that start to froth a little bit, and that's how we know that yeast is active and ready to go. While I'm waiting on that, next step is about a teaspoon of salt, 60 mils of cooking oil. I'm not really an exact measurement sort of guy. That's why I don't bake. Cooking's an art, baking is a science. Next up, we're going to add 4 cups of flour. So I'm going to split it. I'm going to use 2 cups of semolina flour and 2 cups of plain flour. And there we have our cups. Now, what we do is just mix that in and we're just going to wait for that yeast to activate a couple of minutes. So you can see here, what you can see is the yeast is starting to activate, the top's starting to get foamy, and that's how we know it's almost ready to go into the mix. Alright, so now my yeast is activated, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to create a little well in the middle of my flour. I've mixed it together well and I'm just going to slowly add this while I mix it until I get a nice dough consistency. I always like to work with my hands. Who I am, like I think that you could use a spoon to mix this, but you get a really good feel for it. I'm going to slowly add the water and bring it all together until you get a nice dough. And then the fun part comes. If you have a mixer, you can always use a mixer for this. There's a lot of little Roban mixers with dough hooks or paddles or whisks or anything. But, you know, I think a lot of the art of cooking is lost with technology, and I really love it. Like, I love going back to basics. I love making mayonnaises and aiolis with just a whisk and a bowl, and I love food and I love working with it and I love getting my hands into it, and I think you'll lose a lot of that, and it's important to continue to do that to keep your passion. Oh, and I still to this day, many years later, can't help but make a mess. Just to remember, clean chef's a good chef. I'm obviously not a good one. Just gonna clean this mess up now. Right, and this is my favorite part. So what you do is you want to flour your bench down, pull your dough out, and then you've got to work it. And you can feel the dough's really tough at the moment, and so you just want to work it until it starts to soften up. So it takes about 10 minutes. I like to grab it, roll it, and push it. And story time while I work the dough. Again, taking you back to when I was a kid, 17, first year apprentice, working at a restaurant in Brisbane, and I was put with the task of making pizza dough for a busy Friday night service. We had over 100 seats in the restaurant. We'd probably turn it over once or twice. So we'd go through a lot of pizzas. And what I did is I got all my ingredients in the mixer bowl. We had a massive mixer, probably make about 10 kilos of dough at a time. So I've got all my ingredients in the bowl. I've plugged it in. I've turned it on. I've pressed go. And then all of a sudden, bang! I hear a massive crack. Sparks start flying everywhere. There's black stuff all over the walls. I look down. I left the dough hook. I left the power cord wrapped around the dough hook, and it started spinning. And I set a fire in the kitchen. So then I had the wonderful task, after my boss came in and I was hidden, so he couldn't yell at me, of making all those pizza bases by hand, exactly how you see me doing it right now. Just working the dough. So you can see here, it's starting to get easier to work. It's getting softer, and we've just got to keep going along with this until it's soft enough. All right, so again, I'm going to get the producer. He's going to grab a steel bowl for me so I can leave this rest, let it proof, and let it grow. What I want to do, roll it into a nice dough ball like this. Get your bowl, spray it with oil so that it doesn't stick. The dough has a tendency to stick to things. In the bowl, spray the top with oil. Then all we do is you set that aside for half an hour and let that proof. What I like to do is get my finger and I run a ring around the dough. That way I know where it started with the growth, and then I can keep an eye on it as it progresses and grows. So we're about 15 minutes into the proving process, and you can sort of see the ring I drew around with my finger is starting to disappear. The dough's growing and you can just feel it. It's just starting to become nice and soft, and it's almost ready to roll out. So my pizza dough's proved up now, and I'm going to show you what to do next. Again, as always, when working with dough, flour down my bench. You can see here, I've sort of put my fingers in that and deflated a bit, but it's doubled in size. Then what I'm going to do, I'm going to cut it into 3, and then I'm going to roll it into dough balls, and they're pizza size ones. So I just work it again. Always try to get as many creases out of it and get a nice smooth dough ball like this, because any creases end up cracks in your pizza base, and the last thing you want is you don't want cracks. See, I just fold it over itself, over the top, over the side, and then just roll it. Little dough balls there, sprinkle them with a little bit of flour. Just going to let them sit for 5 minutes, and then we're going to start rolling them out. All right guys, so our dough's rested and it's ready to roll, just like me. Now I'm going to show you what to do next. Take our dough ball and just slowly soften, and we just flatten it out into a nice round circle. Get some more flour. Flour up our rolling pin, again just to prevent sticking. Top of that, and then you just want to roll back and forth, flip it sideways, and again. And I just keep flipping it and rolling it until I get the desired size I want. Now this is going to be a nice, thin, crispy, light pizza base. It's important. Normally you would have just a roller to poke little holes in it, just so that the It doesn't puff up in areas, but you can just use a fork. It just takes a little bit longer. Next step, fold it over your hand, spray oil, spray a tray. I've got a pizza oven here. If you don't have a pizza oven at home, what you can do is you can fry the bottom of your pizza base in a pan just to get it all crispy and crunchy. What I do now is I just put it in the oven for about a minute and a half just to par cook. And I guess I'll just keep going with the others while I wait for that one. And I'll actually even just set a timer because I'm a forgetful person. So now the producer's told me he wants to see me spin it. Look, I've never, spinning isn't actually a thing. I think it's just a commercialized thing we see on TV, but here we go. I'm gonna, hey. I like to work it with my hands even and just slowly spread it out. You don't have a rolling pin just to get the size you want. So we've par cooked our pizza base, and next up I'm going to show you what I like to do with it. I've got my tomato sugo here, which if you watch my other video, you'll see how I make it. So just like to spread the sauce out, get a nice coating of that. All right, so when I make a pizza, I always think it's important to use good quality ingredients. I like to buy real mozzarella and just cut nice thin slices of it. And I'm gonna use that. Got some fresh basil here. Just gonna lay that out over the base of the pizza. Serrano ham, or hamon as it's commonly known, that'll be the topping. And then I just like to lay slices of the mozzarella all around the pizza, and I've stuck just a little bit short, and then just throw this in the oven. So halfway through the cooking process, I turn the pizza. Most ovens will have a hot side and a cold side, so when you turn it, it just makes the cooking process nice and even. What I've got here, I've pulled it out of the oven. I've got a nice stone baked pizza base that's crispy. We've got fresh tomato sugo, basil, mozzarella, and then I just like, the reason I don't put the hamon on before the cooking process is because it really dries out, and you don't want it to do that. You want that nice salty flavor of it to come through. Then what I'll finish it off with, some baby rocket. Drizzle of olive oil. You have a perfect crispy stone baked pizza. And if you like, I'm going to put that out there. And let's see how the producer feels. Now, I think it's important to keep the pizza fresh, and that's why I don't like to put the ingredients on before the cooking other than the cheese and the sauce. Ingredients like rocket, they're just going to wilt really badly, and you really want the flavor to come through from them. I think the only thing personally, I'd like to put some chili with this. That'd be awesome if I could put some chili, but it's an easy way to make it home.